First stop on the train is Chief Justice Roberts. Why? But not just because he's the chief of the Supreme Court, but because any appeal that comes out of the D.C., the Trump administration, by claiming that the Supreme Court has power under what is referred to as the All Writs Act.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we're diving into what might be the most significant Trump's legal house of cards just took a Supreme Court-sized hit, leaving his team scrambling for a plan B that might not exist. The Supreme Court has spoken, and with a resounding 6-3 decision, they've effectively told the former president that no, he cannot hide behind presidential immunity forever. This landmark ruling has sent shockwaves through Trump's legal team and could dramatically accelerate the timeline of his criminal trials. So buckle up. We've got a lot to unpack today. Our first stop on this legal journey is Chief Justice John Roberts. Now, he's not just important because he's the chief of the Supreme Court, but because any appeal coming out of the D.C. Circuit initially lands on his desk. When Trump's team filed their emergency application, claiming the Supreme Court has power under what's known as the All Writs Act, it went straight to Roberts. Let's pause for a moment to understand this. The All Writs Act grants federal courts the authority to issue all writs necessary or appropriate in aid of their respective jurisdictions. But this power is extremely narrow in application. It's not some magic wand that can be waved to solve all legal problems. And critically, many legal experts immediately pointed out that it simply doesn't apply to the facts of Trump's case. Roberts could have denied this application on his own. In fact, for most emergency applications, that's exactly what would happen. But Roberts, recognizing the extraordinary national significance of anything related to Trump, decided to refer the matter to the entire 9-justice panel. This decision alone signals how the Supreme Court views these cases. They're not just routine legal matters, but questions that could reshape our understanding of presidential power for generations to come. When emergency applications hit the appellate courts, the process is intricate. Hampton Dinger, who ran in and secured an emergency injunction, specifically a temporary restraining order from a federal court judge in the District of Columbia, set this whole legal machine in motion. Generally, courts of appeal don't have jurisdiction over temporary restraining orders, which typically only remain in place for about 5 days. But in cases of extraordinary importance like this one, the entire process accelerates and escalates. Let's get to the heart of the matter. Trump has a massive problem. His entire legal strategy, the foundation of his defense across multiple criminal cases, relied heavily on presidential immunity claims. The solution was almost elegant in its simplicity: delay all trials until he potentially returns to office. But now the Supreme Court has decisively blocked that path with their landmark 6-3 ruling, and Trump's team is scrambling like never before. The problem just got exponentially worse when Trump's own lawyer accidentally undermined their case during oral arguments. In what legal observers are calling a catastrophic, unforced error, his attorney admitted that some presidential actions are indeed private and not covered by immunity. Oops doesn't begin to cover the magnitude of this mistake. What we're witnessing is a remarkable development in American jurisprudence. The court is solving the American problem of potential presidential criminality while simultaneously creating a new, immediate problem for Trump. He might actually have to face consequences like a regular citizen, possibly before the 2024 election. Before we move on to the juicy details of the court's decision, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this deep dive legal analysis, please take just 1 second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Our analytics show that over 98% of you watch these videos without subscribing. It costs you absolutely nothing, but it makes a tremendous difference in helping us continue to provide this kind of detailed content. Did you click that subscribe button? Great, thank you so much for your support. Now let's get back to this bombshell ruling. Ever wonder what happens when a president thinks his power comes with an invisible force field against the law? It's like watching someone confidently walk into a glass door, except the glass door is the entire United States justice system. Trump's legal strategy has been built on the rickety foundation that presidents can basically do whatever they want and simply slap an official business sticker on it afterward. It's the constitutional equivalent of calling shotgun, just yelled official presidential business. and you're supposedly immune from any legal consequences. At least, that's what Trump's team desperately wanted the Supreme Court to believe. During oral arguments, this legal fantasy started crumbling faster than a stale Trump Tower taco bowl. The justices weren't just skeptical, they were practically rolling their eyes into another dimension as they posed hypothetical scenarios that had Trump's lawyers squirming like worms on hot pavement. Justice Sotomayor delivered what many observers call the knockout punch, when she asked if a president could order Navy SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival and still claim immunity. According to Trump's expansive legal theory, totally fine. Immune. She continued, her voice dripping with barely concealed sarcasm. Organizes a military coup to hold on to power? Immune. Takes a bribe in exchange for a pardon? Immune, 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 immune. You could almost hear Trump's lawyers' internal screams as they realized this intellectual demolition wasn't going according to plan. It's worth taking a moment to understand why Hampton Dinger is so central to this case. His role isn't what many assume. He's not heading an office devoted to prosecution like Special Counsel Jack Smith. The Office of Special Counsel is actually a term of art used for an organization responsible for matters related to federal workers, an important position, but distinct from the criminal prosecutions Trump faces. Trump doesn't want Dinger in this role. He doesn't want independent watchdogs. He doesn't want anybody serving out a 5-year term during his potential administration. And so, he fired Dinger without cause, which violates due process rights for someone eminently qualified for the position. If you wanted an ethical, trustworthy individual to take that position, you'd want somebody who looks and acts exactly like Hampton Dinger. His firing is just one more example of Trump's disregard for institutional norms and legal constraints, the very issue at the heart of the immunity question. The Supreme Court justices were essentially asking a fundamental question, so the president could commit actual crimes and get away with it. And Trump's team was standing there like, well, yes, but when you say it that way, it sounds bad. When pressed about limitations to this sweeping immunity claim, Trump's lawyers started visibly sweating through their expensive suits. One justice asked if taking bribes for ambassadorships could be considered an official act covered by immunity. The legal team's response was about as coherent as Trump explaining nuclear policy. Lots of words, zero substance. They clearly hadn't prepared for the radical notion that presidents shouldn't be able to commit crimes with impunity. The courtroom atmosphere was described by observers as somewhere between a comedy club and a classroom where a student forgot there was a test today. The justices weren't even trying to hide their frustration, as Trump's team kept insisting that virtually any presidential action could be stamped official and therefore immune from prosecution. It was like watching someone try to convince Gordon Ramsay that a microwaved hot dog is fine dining. The justices weren't having it, and Trump's immunity bubble started deflating in real time. The truly beautiful moment came when the justices took Trump's official business defense and turned it into comedy gold. Could a president rob a bank and call it official presidential cash collection? According to Trump's logic, why not? His lawyers fumbled for an answer that wouldn't completely sink their case, but it was too late. The absurdity of their position was laid bare for everyone to see. What made the scene particularly delicious was how quickly the justices sliced through the legal nonsense. Trump's team kept trying to argue that presidential powers are essentially limitless, but the justices countered with increasingly ridiculous scenarios that exposed the dangerous implications of such a view. The court's questioning revealed something important. They weren't just skeptical about Trump's specific case. They were deeply concerned about the precedent it would set. If presidents can label any action official business and escape accountability, then the presidency becomes a 4-year crime pass. Want to eliminate your political enemies? Just call it national security. Need some extra cash? Official presidential fundraising. The justices saw right through this dangerous game. The Trump team's arguments were so flimsy that at one point, the courtroom atmosphere was described as a mix of bewilderment and secondhand embarrassment. It's as if they were saying, sure, our argument doesn't make sense if you think about it, so please don't think about it. Now Trump faces what must be his personal nightmare, being treated like a regular citizen who has to follow the same laws as everyone else. The United States Supreme Court has just ruled against Donald Trump, in his efforts to remove Hampton Dinger from office as the head of the Office of Special Counsel. Dinger, appointed by President Biden to serve out a 5-year term, had only held the appointment for a couple of months before Trump's legal challenge. Both Chief Justice Roberts and the majority opposed Trump's efforts, allowing Dinger to remain as head of the Office of Special Counsel for at least 5 more days until the trial judge holds her hearing. Imagine that. The man who spent his entire life believing rules are for other people might actually have to play by them. It's like telling a toddler they can't have ice cream for breakfast. The tantrum is inevitable, but the rules still apply. But if Trump thought being treated like a regular citizen was bad, wait until you hear how his own lawyer accidentally torpedoed his entire defense. When you're paying top dollar for legal representation, you expect them to at least not make things worse. But that's exactly what happened when D. John Sauer stepped up to the Supreme Court plate and struck out so badly that even little leaguers were cringing. Trump hired fancy lawyers with a single job: convincing the justices that presidents should be able to do literally anything while in office without facing consequences. Pretty simple assignment, right? Just repeat total immunity until everyone gets tired and gives up. But Sauer had to go and complicate things by accidentally telling the truth. When the justices started grilling him, Sauer made a legal whoopsie that experts are calling the equivalent of scoring a touchdown for the opposing team. He admitted out loud in front of everyone that some of Trump's actions as president were actually private and not covered by any immunity protection. You could almost hear the record scratch sound effect across America. This little slip-up was like watching someone cut the branch they're sitting on. Once Sauer admitted that some presidential actions weren't official, the justices pounced faster than cats on a laser pointer. If some actions aren't covered by immunity, well then, which ones? Where's the line? Is ordering a Diet Coke official business, but threatening election officials just Trump being Trump? Sauer's concession opened the floodgates for the justices to start questioning which actions could be considered official presidential duties and which were just Trump doing his Trump thing. It was the legal equivalent of bringing a knife to a gunfight, except Sauer accidentally brought a banana and then slipped on the peel himself. The legal team started tap dancing around questions like they were auditioning for Riverdance. They twisted themselves into human pretzels trying to walk back their own admission. Well, when the president does it, it's official. Except when it's not. But we get to decide when it's which. Unless we don't like the outcome, in which case it's definitely official. Even the conservative justices were looking at each other like, is this guy for real? You just know Trump was watching this disaster unfold from Mar-a-Lago, probably turning a shade of orange that scientists haven't even discovered yet. I imagine him throwing chicken nuggets at the TV screen while yelling, "You're fired," at a lawyer who can't hear him. The problem with hiring yes men is that sometimes they have to face people who ask actual questions. The justices, smelling blood in the water, went after this weakness like sharks at a chum festival. Justice Sonia Sotomayor wasn't having any of it, making it clear that these arguments were making a mockery of American democracy. The justices forced Trump's team to try explaining the difference between official and unofficial presidential acts, a distinction they clearly hadn't prepared for, like students who skipped studying for the exam because they thought they could charm the teacher. And then came the moment that perfectly captures just how absurd this whole immunity claim is. Remember when Trump bragged during his 2016 campaign that he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and not lose voters? Well, his lawyer had to stand before the highest court in the land and try to explain whether that hypothetical murder would count as an official presidential act covered by immunity. Spoiler alert, it didn't go well for Team Trump. The justices essentially asked, if a president robs a bank, is that just official presidential cash collection? If a president assassinates a rival, is that official enemy elimination? Trump's legal team struggled harder with these hypotheticals than most people do with the instructions for assembling IKEA furniture. Legal experts are calling this one of the biggest self-inflicted wounds in Supreme Court history. Sauer's admission directly contradicted the sweeping immunity claims Trump had been making for years. It's like claiming you're a vegetarian while being caught on camera, eating a plate full of ribs. It kind of undermines your whole argument. As if watching his lawyer fumble wasn't painful enough, Trump soon discovered that the ultimate backstab wasn't coming from Democrats or the deep state. It was coming from the judges he personally placed on the Supreme Court. What happens when the insurance policy you bragged about for years suddenly refuses to pay out? Trump is finding out the hard way. For years, Trump paraded around Washington, bragging about his Supreme Court picks like they were trophies he'd won at a golf tournament. "I gave you 3 beautiful Supreme Court justices," he'd remind his supporters at rallies, making it sound like he'd personally delivered babies instead of just signing nomination papers. Whenever legal troubles loomed, Trump would wink at his base as if to say, "Don't worry, I've got friends in high places wearing fancy robes." But here's where our story takes a twist that not even the writers of House of Cards would have thought believable. Those same justices Trump appointed, the ones he expected to be his get-out-of-jail-free cards, apparently remembered something important. They swore an oath to the Constitution, not to Donald J. Trump's personal legal defense fund. When the immunity case made its way to the Supreme Court, you could almost hear Trump's confidence from Mar-a-Lago. After all, he'd stacked the court with his picks: Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett. These were supposed to be his ride-or-die judges, the ones who'd have his back when the legal system came knocking. Trump probably thought this case would be easier to win than a rigged carnival game. But something funny happened. These justices, especially the ones Trump appointed, started asking tough questions and showing skepticism toward the very immunity claims Trump was banking on. It was like watching someone realize the bodyguards they hired were actually working for the building, not for them personally. Take Brett Kavanaugh, for example. Trump stood by him during a confirmation process that was more dramatic than all seasons of The Bachelor combined. You'd think Kavanaugh would feel eternally indebted, right? Well, turns out being handed a lifetime appointment to interpret the Constitution might make a person take that job description somewhat seriously. When it came time to rule on whether presidents can do whatever they want without consequences, Kavanaugh wasn't exactly rushing to Trump's defense. The conservative justices essentially sent Trump a message. "Look, we appreciate the job and all, but we're not going to set the entire American legal system on fire just so you can avoid some court dates." Imagine Trump's face when he realized those black robes weren't MAGA hats in disguise. What makes this especially delicious is how genuinely shocked Trump seemed by this betrayal. It's like he forgot these people have actual jobs that extend beyond making him happy. The man who famously demands loyalty above all else discovered that sometimes people remember they have responsibilities to something bigger than one man's ego. The Supreme Court ultimately ruled 6-3 against Trump's expansive immunity claims, with Chief Justice Roberts writing in no uncertain terms that the president is not above the law, a direct contradiction to Trump's apparent belief system. The ruling was split along ideological lines, but not in the way Trump expected. His own appointees sided against his claims, showing a surprising independence from his expected loyalty. Justice Sonia Sotomayor didn't hold back in her dissent, expressing concern that the ruling essentially creates a president who's a king above the law. She warned that the decision sends a dangerous message that allows the president to exploit his office for personal gain, something that probably sounded like a solid business plan to Trump. Trump's reaction to this betrayal was predictable: rage tweeting and fundraising emails portraying himself as a victim. But the truth is simpler. The Supreme Court justices, even the ones he appointed, showed more allegiance to legal principles than to the man who put them there. For Trump, whose worldview revolves around transactional relationships, this might be the cruelest cut of all. So Trump's grand immunity defense just went down faster than his spray tan in a swimming pool. The Supreme Court basically told him that being president doesn't mean you get to do whatever you want. Shocking concept for a guy who thinks rules are just suggestions for other people. But don't worry, folks. Our favorite orange defendant still has some tricks up his sleeve. Legal experts say he'll now waste everyone's time arguing about which actions were official versus private, because nothing says innocent like stalling for years. His entire strategy has been to delay until everyone's too tired to care anymore. The walls are closing in on Trump, but he's still desperately looking for escape hatches. The clock is ticking, and for the first time in his life, Donald Trump might be facing a deadline he can't tweet his way out of. If you found this breakdown informative, please hit that like button, share with friends who need to understand what's happening, and of course, subscribe to the channel for more in-depth analysis of the biggest stories in politics and law. We'll be here watching every development as this landmark case continues to unfold. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.